And we are broadcasting to you from our North Catholic studios in Cranberry Township with our third episode of our podcast on North Catholic Athletics. My name is Alex Brown.
And I'm Ryan Berry.
And together we are your hosts for this podcast. Now let's start and let's talk a little about basketball before we get too much into it.
Yep, we'll get into the boys and girls varsity basketball as their respective seasons ended this past week, and we'll talk about the semifinal game and then the championship games at North Allegheny and how those games unfolded.
And then after that, we'll talk a little bit of hockey, varsity hockey, and diving. But first, let's talk in a generalization, Ryan, of these games. So, in a normal year, both the boys and the girls varsity basketball teams would make it to states.
Yep.
But due to the condensed state bracket that they're doing, they don't make it to states. So this one was a stinger for them, but they both had so successful seasons. And with that, Ryan, let's move on to talk about the North Catholic girls varsity team.
They've had two games since we've last talked. The first game was a 57-36 win over Laurel. It was a good game where they shot really well and were able to get a lot of turnovers as they have had in their last couple games.
And they were able to withstand a couple of forceful pushes by Laurel to get back in that game. They kept on pushing.
As they did against Freedom as well.
Yeah, and they kept on pushing in that second and third quarter. But in the fourth quarter, North Catholic pulled away with a 21-7 advantage in that quarter. And they were really good that game from three.
I mean, because
shooting 40%.
If you take away the first and fourth quarter, that's a 1-point Laurel advantage. Because in the second quarter, Laurel outscored us 10-9, and then in the third quarter it was 9-9. So take away those two quarters. Good thing they had the first and fourth quarter. You play all four quarters, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But breaking it down, that game was closer than the score indicates.
They're actually better than I gave them credit for. 44% from three and 40% from two. But they were really good in that game, really good. And a lot of these
Laurel did not shoot well.
Facets.
They shot 25% from the field, 26% from the 3-point land, and the only thing that the thing they did really well was free throw percentage, and that kind of kept them in the game. They made 7 free throws, and whenever you can make those free throws, Alex, then that really gives you a chance to get back in the game and a chance to win.
And North was great with the points in the paint. Players like Ava Walker were just getting to the basket, getting fouled, and making shots. They had 22 points in the paint, along with 13 offensive rebounds. But they also had 9 steals in the game versus Laurel's 1. And that was also a big difference in that game, with points off turnovers being 16 points for North, and they also had 12 points off of transition points. So that's off of those steals. So that's pretty impressive.
Scoring was led by Dacia Lewandowski and Elena Rocco, both with 13 points. Tara Lukat added another 6.
Anna Waskowitz added 5.
And Ava Walker and Tori Drevna each added 10 points, along with a couple three three-pointers for Tori Drevna and 1 for Ava Walker as well.
And they were really good in that game, every facet, and that led them to being a member of the WPIAL Championship yet again. But before we talk about that game, Ryan, I had the opportunity to speak with both Tara Luko and Tori Drevna after their win against Laurel, and hear how those interviews went. I'm here with Tara Luko after her and her team's defeat of Laurel by the score of 57-36. And now they're on to the WPIAL Championship. Tara, how much does this mean getting back to the WPIAL Championship just like you did last year?
I didn't get there last year at Vincention because I went to Vincention last year. So we actually got knocked out the first round. So this is a big deal getting to the WPIAL Championship because it's something I've always wanted to do. And I think that this is the team to do it. So I'm really happy that we won today.
Your team, Laurel was pushing hard back in from the first to the third quarter, and you pulled away at the end. How are you able to combat their constant tries to get back into the game?
I think that our defense is just very good, and I think that we all work really well together. And I think what set us apart and was able to get us this lead was the help defense, I think, because we were all able to just be in the paint if we got beat, and we were able to grab the rebound, and I think that's what made the difference.
In the last quarter, it was a 21-6, a 21-7 advantage for your team. How much is your closing of those games important to not only your team but your goals in practices?
I think it's a big deal because like that's one of our strengths, and it's something that we do every game, I think, because I think we always close out really well. And I think it comes from practice because we work really hard to make sure that we're strong in every quarter, especially in the fourth.
Well, thank you, Terry. You had a great game yourself, and congratulations, and good luck this Saturday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Tori Drevna, after her and her team defeated Laurel by the score of 57-36 and are advancing to the WPIAL Championship. Tori, how much does this mean getting back to the WPIAL Championship?
It means a lot. We had a big role this year because last year we obviously graduated 9 seniors, so it's a whole new starting 5 coming in, and it's a whole new group. It's a whole new lineup. So for us to do it by ourselves, it's a huge deal.
How have your freshmen, like especially the newcomers, like Elena Rocco and Ava Walker, been able to help your team get to the point where they are today?
Oh, they helped us. They help us so much. They do a really good job with Elena hitting down the 3 and Ava driving to the basket, both of them. And they stepped up a lot, obviously, for only being freshmen, and it's a big part of our team.
You had a couple big threes in the third quarter to put your team in a comfortable position. How much is it, a focus of your game to really close strong?
Well, we weren't hitting shots. We weren't hitting a lot. We weren't finishing at the rim. And I felt like I had my shot on, so I was like, I'll take a couple, and they went in. So
they certainly did. Thank you for your time today. Congratulations on the win, and good luck this Saturday.
Thank you.
And you just heard from Tara Lucote and Tori Drevna after their 57-36 defeat of Laurel. And with that, let's talk about their championship game.
It was against Mohawk, located at North Allegheny Senior High School. It was a close game throughout, but they ended up falling 54-48 in the championship game. They trailed most of that game, but the thing that really helped Mohawk get that win was the three-pointer. North Catholic wasn't able to convert on the three-point attempts as much as Mohawk was, and Mohawk really pulled away from the start. It was 2-2. Then Mohawk made 3 straight three-pointers to put that game really into Mohawk's favor and really take the lead. And made North Catholic be on their heels the rest of that game.
The problem from the beginning was the start. I know Coach DiGregorio talks about his team with their starts, and they haven't started great a lot of this season. The girls have always started really good, and this was a different game for them because Mohawk was hot from the beginning. They were shooting well, shooting threes from the beginning of the game, making those, and they were down 11-2 at one point there in the first quarter. And it was tough to recover from that, but they did. They kept on fighting, right, Ryan?
They were able to come back in the fourth quarter and actually take the lead. But then, as there was the story,
with under 2 minutes to go, they had the lead.
And as was the story throughout most of the game, as soon as North Catholic was able to get close, Mohawk was able to make a three and then just take the lead back or extend the lead. And that was the story for most of the game. And the thing with North Catholic that game, they usually score a lot of points. This game is a lower scoring game than normal. One of the reasons for that is North Catholic wasn't playing their game. Mohawk did a really good job of forcing them to play differently. And North Catholic, they did an okay job of turning into it, but their identity is not the three-pointer. They've been good at the three-pointer throughout the year, but that's not where they want most of their offense to come from. They want it to come from inside, getting it to Ava Walker, getting it to Elena Rock, and be able to make some shots down there, and with the occasional big three-pointer when they could shoot it. But that wasn't the case in this game. Mohawk did a really good job taking away the options inside and forced North Catholic to take a lot of threes, and I think that had part to do with Mohawk being able to get a lead for most of the game, and North Catholic felt like they had to get that extra point on the scoreboard instead of just taking a 2 to get back into the game, and they weren't able to fully get back into the game until the late stages of the game, and then Mohawk was able to rebound and take that game home.
And it all comes down to opportunities and making good use of your opportunities. That second and third quarter was where, especially that third quarter, is where North really started to push. They really started to push, and they kept on coming and coming. It gave me a lot of deja vu of the game that it was the boys played against Bell Vernon on last Thursday. It gave me a lot of deja vu of that game, where they were really coming. They were behind for a lot of that game, but they kept on coming, and they pulled ahead at the end. But the difference was the ending. But they played really well, and they had a great season.
I mean, it's a young team too, so they got
It's a
bright
really young
future,
team.
Alex.
They got Daisha Ludkowski, who is a sophomore right now, will be a junior.
Elena Rocco is a
Elena
freshman,
Rocco and
and
Ava Walker.
as well, and some other
Huge
up-and-comers
additions to
probably.
that team.
Next year, they're gonna add more and more players.
But their seniors they had this year, they had 2 new seniors. Tara Luca especially had a really good season as she came from Vincentian, and she was a key contributor. But they were one point about that game again was that Mohawk was the highest scoring team in the section coming into this game, and they held them to under what they were averaging for the season.
That helped them be able to stay in the game.
That helped
Alex,
them be able to stay in the game because their defense.
Because they weren't able to score as much as they normally do, also, and being able to bring pressure on the defensive end, be able to force turnovers, really kept Mohawk from being able to extend that lead. Because Mohawk, I mean, they had a great first quarter from the 3-point line, but they cooled off in the second quarter. And if they were able to make those threes again, that game would have been out of reach. But North Catholic was able to get back into that game and be able to take another lead late in that stages of that game.
As you said, Ryan, they have a young team, and also Tori Drevna is a sophomore. So the really young team, they'll get more talented as the years go by and as they progress over the summer into next season. And they're always going to be a force to be reckoned with within their division wherever they play. And Mohawk, credit to them, back-to-back champions. But if this year was any indication of what these players can be next year, they're not going to be for long. Because Mohawk had a very old team. If you look at their starting lineup, Ryan, Mohawk had 4 seniors in their starting lineup. North had 1.
That just talks about the future that North has as well.
That just talks about how young. And then the other player on Mohawk that wasn't a senior was a junior. So I mean, they have a lot of good players going. North has a lot of players coming up and coming in. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can build over the next couple of years while they have this talent still.
Let's move on to the North Catholic boys varsity basketball team in their upset of the 1-seeded Bell Vernon, 77-76. It was a great game, Alex. I mean, they trailed for most of the game like the girls, but they were able to come back at the end of the game and get a huge win. And just a fantastic win, Alex, coming in as the 5 seed to Bell Vernon. That's an hour and a half. It's about an hour drive, and that's just a really, really dominant. Be able to come in there and just get that huge win, Alex. That just shows how the grit and character of this team.
They were fantastic in that final fourth quarter. Fantastic. But they struggled early. You have to have a better start than what they did. It wasn't a good enough start. After the end of the first quarter, it was 23-17 at halftime. It was an 8-point deficit. They came back from there. They gained 3 points in the third quarter, and then they got a 24-18 advantage in that fourth quarter.
Was the
and Max Rotman was
he had
incredible.
He had 14 points. He had all 14 points in that fourth quarter, plus the game-winning 3. I mean, that was just an incredible game. I mean, the last game, too, against Quaker, he came in, he provided energy for like every game.
He's like a
spark plug coming into these games, Alex. And
he is clutch. He is clutchness in his veins.
And in the third quarter, one of the reasons that North Catholic was able to stay in that game was due to Connor Madeline being able to get easy buckets through the lane, Alex. He was able to get those buckets that you can just drive in and get to keep your team in the game and stop the momentum of Bell Vernon in that game.
But listen to this stat, though. This was a concerning stat for North in this game. They had 0 points in transition, and Bell Vernon had 23. That's concerning. That was a concerning stat for that game.
And the things that they've usually done really well in this whole entire year, they actually didn't lead in. They didn't lead in second chance points, which they normally do. They led only by a small margin in points in the paint.
They were down by 50 points in the paint.
Bell Vernon had 10 more offensive rebounds than North did. North really used to dominate, or early in the year, dominate on the offensive boards. But Bell Vernon is a fast-paced team, and that they get those buckets quickly. And the thing that I was watching in Bell Vernon is every time North was able to get close, Bell Vernon went on a quick 9-0 run in the matter of 30 seconds. But North Catholic was able to slow down the pace a little bit to be able to kind of shut down Bell Vernon. And then once it got really close, North Catholic was able to pick it up at the end of the game to keep it close and get that huge 3 with 3 seconds left by Max Rotman. And it was kind of the tail of the 3 ball, because in the Quaker Valley game, Owen DeGregorio hit 7 threes, and then Max Rodman comes into this game, makes 2 threes at the end of the game to win the game. I mean, he made a 3 to make it 74-74, and then he made a 3 to make it 77-76.
Which was that was an unbelievable play, because you thought it's gonna be really tough for them to come back. It's over because they scored.
Bell Vernon
scored.
Like, what was 15 seconds left?
It was like not a lot of time at all. And then they come down. North comes down. They're running the offense. They're going back and forth at the top. Goes down to Rotman, and he drains it with 3.8 left on the clock. But a stat that you really don't think helps teams win games, it doesn't really matter, free throws. North was 8 for 13.
That is a stat that really helps teams win
North
games.
was 8 for 13. Bell Vernon was 5 for 13. You get 2 more free throws.
You do the math.
You do the math. 2 more free throws, 7 points, they win the game. But shoulda, coulda, woulda, North is going to the championship. But if you look at the stats, Andrew Emmerman led our team with 21 points.
I feel like we're repeating
every
this every
game.
week, Alex.
It's the same thing. But he was incredible. 9 of 13, 3 of 5 from the free throw line. Defensive rebounds, he had 13 defensive rebounds in that game, and he had 5 blocks. That's a lot.
One thing I want to mention is that kind of took Bell Vernon out of this game. Their leading scorer, Whitlock, got in foul trouble in that third.
No, Martin was the leading scorer. Their second leading scorer.
The second leading scorer, but their leading scorer throughout the year, Whitlock, got in foul trouble in that later in that game, and he got out of the game at one point, but he was able to come back in. But another player for them, Gordon, one of their other top players, fouled out in the fourth quarter. And Alex, that was a difference in that game because he's a really, really scoring threat, and that helped North Catholic be able to get the W in that game because that just took out a whole weapon for them.
I thought that Bell Vernon played a simpler game without him in the lineup, though, because they were about to win the game with him not in the lineup for those last 2 minutes of the game.
They let North Catholic come back in that game.
But they let them come back. They did. But they shot Devin Whitlock in that game. Because here's the reason why I thought it was a simpler game. He was shooting a lot. He was 7 of 26 from the field. 7 of 26. That is...
as soon as Gordon left in that fourth quarter, he really didn't take a lot of
that
shots.
much? But why are you shooting that
a
much?
lot of shots, though.
Why are you shooting that much when you're making that horrible percentage? That's a horrible percentage.
But that is not.
I mean, that's horrible. Quentin Martin was their guy that game. Quentin Martin was the guy. He did have a lot of
points in the first quarter, and the announcer was saying his nickname is Mr. First Quarter.
Yeah, Mr. First Quarter, but he wasn't Mr. Fourth Quarter because he wasn't a part of the game. Mr. Fourth Quarter should be Max Rotman, or something. He's a clutch guy. He's the Energizer Bunny that can get you points.
Coach Molly Rotman's son, the coach of the women's team or the girls team.
Yeah, and they're both great at what they do, but he was incredible in that part of that game as he's a sophomore, and look what he's going to do in the next couple of years too, is to show you how he's going to grow. But he's going to be able to get more and more minutes over the next couple of years. But a guy that's another senior, Connor Madelon, had 17 points, and he was really good and pivotal at keeping North Catholic in that game in that fourth quarter and third quarter by getting the baskets, easy buckets. He was able to get up right up the lane, right into the paint, and just do some layups. Because they were guarding the three. Bell Vernon was guarding the three heavily.
The differences in the third quarter.
Heavily, they were guarding the three. Heavily, that whole game, they were guarding the three, and then as soon as they came off the three, North started pounding them.
That's exactly right, Alex. I mean, they couldn't figure out how to stop North because, as I mentioned earlier, Connor Madelon was able to get those easy buckets that really kept North in the game.
Those buckets, and because of the contributions of everyone else on that team, and their will to come back in that game like they had the entire game.
You just kind of felt it going to the end of that game, Alex.
You felt it because they kept on pushing. And they had and they were fired up at the bench during those timeouts. Their Coach DiGregorio was pushing them in that game to keep on coming back, and they did it. And they moved on to the championship game against Lincoln Park, like we're about to talk about right now. And Ryan, this was a stinger because North had them.
They had him in that third quarter. They outscored him 21-15 to take a 2-point lead going into the fourth quarter. But then as soon as that fourth quarter started, Lincoln Park got on the boards, got 4 quick points to take the lead back, and they never looked back the rest of that game. And that's one thing whose fault it wasn't was Andrew Ammerman for North Catholic, who put up 35 points, the majority of the scoring for North Catholic, and he led that team to be very close to another WPIAL championship, Alex.
And he was fantastic, and he's had a fantastic career here at North as he is a senior. But absolutely incredible. He played 33 minutes, most on the team. He was necessary and pivotal to them being in the game up to that point, because he was really the only person who was able to generate a lot of offense in that game by just his sheer size and his defensive ability, and he was great on both sides of the ball. But the problem for North on offense was the 3-ball, which they have been so good at this season, especially when it matters. But Lincoln Park was ready for that.
They weren't able to make those threes like they did against Bella Vernon to get to the championship. And they only shot 17% from 3 for 17 mark. Isaiah Jackson knocked one down. Matthew Greger made 2, but it just wasn't enough to be able to beat a very, very deep Lincoln Park team who has a lot of weapons on offense. They didn't shoot the 3-ball well either, shooting 15% from there, but they shot really well everywhere else from the field. And they got a lot of offensive boards to be able to get that victory. They got 13 offensive rebounds, and then they out-rebounded North on the defensive end as well.
And it was just a combination of things that really brought this game to where it went. Field goal percentage for North, 39%. And then you look at Lincoln Park there at 47%.
And steals as well.
Steals.
Lincoln Park had 8 steals. North Catholic did not have any.
Yep. And you can't do too much. I mean, when you're turning the ball over, North turned the ball over 14 times in the game. And that's a lot of times. And they did it a couple times in the fourth quarter when they couldn't. A couple of travels here, maybe a turnover, maybe they stepped out of bounds, maybe a shot out of bounds. But it was a stinger. But the scoring, Lincoln Park had incredible defense, and
they really tried to limit. I mean, they all doubled up on Ammerman,
and he still had over half the points.
Over
half the points for North.
Then no other options could really, because Lincoln Park played really, really good defense, and when we got open shots, they weren't falling. I mean, it was frustrating. But, I mean, a lot of good came out of this season. Another championship run.
Yeah, great season.
They moved first year they've been in 4A. Both teams were in 3A last year. They
were in the championship, and now they meet each other again.
And this year they move up to 4A, and they're in the championship again. So it's just kind of cool to see these teams moving up and be able to continue to compete. And let's see what happens next year. Maybe they can make another championship run next year, Alex.
And all the seniors were very impressive this season. Andrew Ammerman, Connor Madelon, Owen DiGregorio.
And Isaiah Jackson.
All of that incredible and invaluable contributions to North Catholic basketball. And we wish them the best in their future endeavors. And we wish the rest of the team and the coaching staff a great offseason. And hopefully they can put together another long, deep WPIAL run next year and make it to states. You know what, Ryan? I have to tell you this, because last week you were telling me on the podcast, and all of us, about the new North Catholic Spearwear that you had purchased on the North Catholic Athletics website. And I took the liberty to go and buy myself some new attire. And let me tell you, Ryan, this has really stepped up my clothing, my North Catholic attire to the next level. And you were right, as per usual, as these are the best things to wear on Spirit Days. And I even wear my sweatshirt whenever I'm not at school.
And they don't just have sweatshirts; they have quarter zips, sweatpants, and I guess polos and all
among
this
other
stuff.
things. Yes,
and
it's getting polo weather.
And they have Under Armour as well, and so this just shows that it's high quality material.
Get your Spirit wear today. Well, it's been a couple weeks, Ryan, since we talked about diving and Maggie Foley, who won the WPIALs for her second year in a row. But she had states last weekend, and she did very well.
Yeah, she did. She finished second place in the Class AA meets. And she was actually the second seed coming into it, so that's just where you got to be in. She was a 2-time WPIAL champion, came into Saturday morning 11 dive competition as the number 2 seed, and she maintained that standing and collected 397 points.
Which is unbelievable, and she had a great weekend and a great season. So we look forward to her improving upon that next season, and hopefully winning, maybe next year, first in the States. That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
But she was very successful.
Hopefully she can keep it going next year.
Hopefully. Now, Ryan, let's talk a little bit about North Catholic varsity hockey.
Well, we've had 2 games since we last talked against Freeport and Quaker Valley. We went 1-1 those games, which wasn't terrible. It would have been nice to get another win against Freeport, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of games. We've got some big game coming up, and we'll see if we can make the squeak into the playoffs.
Let's look at the game against Freeport. It was a 3-2 Freeport victory last week, and it was a close game down to the end, Ryan.
It was. I mean, it was back and forth. We started off getting a 1-0 lead. Tay Mellis had a goal assisted by Luke Gartner, and then Freeport responded with 3 straight goals
in the second period. All in the second period.
And then we got another one, Tay Mellis, with 10:30 into the third period, and we were never able to get that equalizer near the end of the game.
And they had 2 goals, Freeport, in a span of about 1 minute and 6 seconds in the second period, and they never needed any more than that. North got a goal in the third period, scored by, once again, Tay Mellis. And pretty good. I mean, he's the one that's scoring a lot of goals for North. Really, a lot. Consistently. But it wasn't enough to put them ahead, and they lost that game. But they rebounded nicely that 2 days later against Quaker Valley in a blowout win.
It was a 6-0 win, and we gave them a lot of opportunities, but we were able to capitalize on our opportunities, and they were not to get the 6-0 win. Connor Bridges had 26 saves to get the shutout, and the scoring started early by Brock Varley, power play goal assisted by Dom DeZort, and then Dom DeZort got a goal assisted by Tay Mellis. That was the first period summary.
Dom DeZort, couple of figures in on both of those goals. A lot of penalties in this game by both teams, but that really wasn't a factor in the end. North Catholic was 2 for 6 on the power play, though, so they
And Quaker Valley
were able
was
to convert
0 for 7.
7. So the penalty kill for North was spectacular in that game, and North was able to convert on 2 of their 6, which is good. But North was dominant from the first period on, and the game was never in doubt.
In the second period, 2 goals scored by Sam DiGaetano, both assisted by Tay Mellis. And one was power play and one was even strength.
And then you get a couple goals figured in the third period just to give them a little more of a cushion, make it even a bigger advantage for North with those being scored by Luke Gartner and Brock Varley. So a lot of guys figuring in on those goals. There was a lot of penalties, as I said. It didn't matter for North as much. If anything, it benefited them. But in the end, a big, resounding win for North that puts them back on the road for a playoff contention. As we look at the standings now, they are third in the Varsity A Northeast Division, but they're hovering around that 6th to 8th spot in the playoffs. They need some things to go their way with other teams losing or winning games. But the best thing that they can do, Ryan, is win their next game on Tuesday.
Against Blackhawk, and that's a big game. Should be a win, but we got to prepare and play as hard as we can to get that win.
And the best thing that you can do, Ryan, is control your own destiny. Control what you can control. And the best way to do that is by winning against Blackhawk on Tuesday.
You put it exactly right, Alex.
Like always. That, Ryan, that concludes our Week 3 podcast episode.
It was another good week, Alex.
It was a pleasure doing with
you. We can do it a lot more in the future. Next week, we'll give you a little sneak peek. We're going to have Mr. Malone,
the voice of North Catholic sports,
and the boys tennis team talk a little bit about their upcoming season and what it means to be able to broadcast those live games for North Catholic.
And that'll be a great interview, so be sure to listen to that next week. And
thank you all
for listening. Yes.
And remember to catch us next week on North Catholic Athletics Podcast.
We are your home for everything North Catholic sports.